Reading have confirmed they're withdrawing their women's team from the Championship. Our reporter James Green has been across this story. James, good to see you. Remind us of the reasons the club have given for this move.
Yeah, look, it's a really sour day actually for women's football in general, not just for everyone associated with Reading. Look, the reason behind the decision is pure and simply financial aspects. They believe, and in the statement it says that financial return on annual investment won't come for 5 years, and they're not willing to take that chance. Now, the statement's quite staggering in a way because it reiterates the past, the success that Reading Football Club have had in the women's game. They've produced talents for the Lionesses. They've competed at the highest level. They only got relegated to the Championship season before last. They've been a top league club in the WSL. For this statement to come out and say they're proud of that, but then make this decision alongside it is staggering in my eyes, because it's not a decision I believe they should be proud of. Now, what I understand is internally at the club, very little has been communicated to any staff members whatsoever. If we go back a year when they were relegated from the WSL, just 10 days after relegation, staff were made part-time. So it came really immediately without any warning whatsoever that that was the change that was going to make. Now, staff have been left in limbo all season long with rumours rumbling constantly. I know for a fact there's many members of staff within that structure of Reading Women's who have been struggling with their mental health. They still haven't been communicated this news apart from what they've seen on the statement. So I asked somebody within the club, do you know whether your role at the club is still apparent? Are you still going to keep your job? No idea. Nothing's been communicated to them whatsoever. So it's very, very disappointing. Are we surprised? Probably not, with the current ownership structure at Reading Football Club. As a club, Di Young, we know he's been trying to sell the club. They were trying to sell off the training ground to local rivals Wickham, and there was big protests around that, which led to Wickham actually pulling out of that deal themselves. They're in desperate need of new ownership. They're in League One themselves, only just survived in League One last season. But it's just some brilliant work from Ruben Sayers and the men's side and the youngsters that they were breeding. But the women's game, they've got a women's academy. That's all going to go now as well. So the future looks really, really bleak.
Yeah, it's such a sad story, isn't it? Because you think of women's football at the moment and you think of it just being... The WSL's been fantastic. You said they haven't been relegated long. They would have had, probably when they got relegated, aspirations to kind of bounce straight back, as most clubs do have when a team gets relegated. And with the money that's being pumped into the game, the potential for revenue through sponsorship and everything, you think of the women's game being on the up. So this is kind of a bad news story, as you say, not just for Reading and Reading women, but for the game as a whole. It
is, and I think if you know, your other clubs, and you hope that you're not looking at that and going, oh, actually, maybe we should start thinking about 5 years' time and what our annual investment's going to be. We know that the investment in the women's game, as you mentioned, is on the rise. It's going to continue to go year on year as the popularity grows. I mean, if we just look at the WSL season last year, you look at what Arsenal were doing, packing out the Emirates Stadium on numerous times, 60,000 fans inside there. The growth is there to see, the numbers back it up. There just needs to be some patience with that growth. But to see that a club like Reading drop down to the 5th tier of the women's game, and you think to yourself, well, how are they possibly going to then be able to get themselves back up with multiple job losses, which are likely going to come as well? It's just very, very disappointing. Disappointing for everyone involved in Reading, but really, really a big blow to the women's game.
And you mentioned the men's side as well. It hasn't been straightforward there. The ownership, you know, they're desperately looking for new ownership. I mean, what's next for the club as a whole?
They're still seeking that new owner. Look, Di Young, we understand he is willing to sell, but he's, like many owners, they're only willing to sell at a certain price. And he's not willing to do that. He wants to concentrate, what we understand, is solely on the men's side. That's what he wants to focus on. He doesn't want any distractions on that. He wants to keep that going as much as he can. But, you know, when early on in the week, there was talk of a takeover of the women's section. Now, this was potentially a lifeline for the women's team, but due to the complexities around the ownership model at Reading, it felt like the takeover bid from the company that were looking to take over didn't want to get involved in that because of the complexities around dealing with Di Young. So, look, it's very, very difficult. I think the club's still got a long way to go. The fans have been very vocal in their protesting against the ownership model, and they want to save the club as best they can. It's a club full of rich history too, but it's a really sad day, Dave. It's a really sad day for Reading and women's football in general.